And all the articles in the S&B really talk about the fact that all of these people are really thinking about minority rights at all, as well as their own ideas. They aren't going to enforce 24-hour opens if that's not the way the floor votes. So then we come back to the whole co-ed lounge issue. And the Faculty Committee on Student Affairs, seeing the way that everything is moving, decides that yes, boys and girls can be in whatever lounge they want 24 hours a day. At a meeting of 40 students to discuss this rule, the S&B reports that a consensus of those at the meeting seemed to indicate that more people believed in the possible success of experimentation in self-determination for halls and floors than in passing a mandatory rule for 24-hour opens. Students articulating the fact that it is not about the rule, it's about the way the rule gets made. They're not saying, give us open dorm hours, they're saying, give us self-governance. President Leggett is hanging on to control with dear life. He keeps talking about minority rights. There's a girl in Smith, after Smith declares home rule, she decides that she's transferring because she can't handle the fact that there are guys on the hall. And so Leggett is very worried about minority opinions. But students keep coming back and saying, no, we care about minority opinions as well, and the whole point is that we want to be able to talk about these issues ourselves. In a great articulation of self-governance as we know it today, a student writes to the S&B that with home rule, the do's replace the cannots. And she writes, home rule demands of the student a consideration of the actual implications of his actions as they affect others as well as himself. In October of '68, Luce becomes the third dorm to declare home rule. The next week, the Senate votes to have a referendum on self-rule. The Senate proposal is that people would vote first as a dorm to decide whether they were going to vote by hall, by floor, or by wing. And that then they're going to vote on what the hours should be. And as well, in the middle of all that, they also vote on whether it's an open ballot or a secret ballot. So they're really, really very worried about all the different steps of democracy to make sure that everybody's voice gets heard. So then this referendum passes, and the proposal goes to the Faculty Committee on Student Affairs, with technically speaking, no more weight than any other joint board resolution. And after this move from the students and the clear articulation by the great majority of students that home rule is what students want, Leggett basically says, okay. He approves the 24-hour co-ed use of lounges. He puts 84 hours a week as the cap on what the dorms can decide. Everyone kind of knows that this isn't going to happen, but at least it makes him feel better. He's got some great line in which he says, well, if you have 24-hour co-ed use of lounges, I don't see why you have to have co-ed use of rooms during the normal hours for sleeping. But students really take this as Leggett saying, okay, you guys can make up your own rules. In this decision, Leggett says, the college can no longer support the old notion that residence hall management ought chiefly to reflect a kind of remedial parenthood in loco parentis environment. The halls replied to this referendum and to Leggett's decision by establishing their own dorm procedures. So now all the halls have their own set policies. A lot of halls decide the hours by floor or by wing, like in places like Younger. And to enforce these rules, every hall has their judicial body that they had, back way before in 1917, and that students are going to set out the punishments for students who break whatever the rules are. Just as an example, Cleveland, as usual, has 24-hour opens. But men must be escorted to and from rooms so that there aren't just guys wandering the hall ignoring the girls or something like that. Dibble, which is a male hall, decides by floor. It varies from 24-hour opens from noon to midnight opens. James, which is an all-girls hall, actually decides to follow the present rule of only Sunday afternoons until the administration makes some change. And so it kind of makes a lot of sense why students want to be able to make their own rule and not just encourage 24-hour opens, because there is clearly still a lot of diversity in student opinions about what should happen. So what happens after we declare home rule? How do we get up to today? In the foreword to the student handbook in 67 to 70, the next year, it says, it is the policy of Grinnell College to impose as few rules as possible. our students are considered to be responsible adults and are treated in that manner. However, Grinnell College is a community. As in any community, certain rules are necessary for the welfare and protection of the individuals of whom it is composed. So we've got this articulation of the fact that we need to take care of each other as a community, and that the administration always has to look out for the safety of the students, but that we're going to treat Grinnell College students as adults. And now that we've got the system of visitation hours changed, and we've already got alternating dorms, it is very easy to move into the idea of co-ed dorms and then co-ed floors. By 74, Dibble Annex and Smith Annex are the only dorms on campus that are single sex. So then there's basically no more need for visitation rules, although technically speaking in the rule book, it's still something that you decide as a floor. So today, we still have unpaid SAs, we still vote on bathrooms, just like you can vote on visitation hours. JUDCO involves students heavily in rule enforcement. Students sit on a whole large number of college committees. And that all really comes out of the tradition of self-governance that has been around forever, but the re-articulation of the strength of self-governance that happens in the late 60s. There's a great quote by Jim Tiedemann, who was Dean of Students in the late 70s, early 80s, and really, along with Tom Cravey, was really important in the development of self-governance in that period. Jim Tiedemann says, "Nothing will work in the residence halls unless the students need it, want it, and fully participate in it. Ultimately, the only ones who can solve problems in the hall are the students themselves. We can and should offer them help and support, but they ultimately must do it." So Grinnell students have the structures of self-governance since the early days of the college. But as we can see in this big turning point in self-governance in the 60s, it is up to the students to use these structures to keep self-governance alive. Self-governance and the structures that exist the whole way through allowed students in the 60s to make decisions that worked for everybody involved. And that self-governance really is allowing for diversity at this time of great social change. So just as students in Langan and Luce and Smith fought for home rule, it's our job to continue to use these structures of self-governance that we've had way back since the beginning of the college to maintain a community where everyone's views go into the big important decisions. So that's kind of the end of my talk. If you want a copy of my paper, if you're working on self-governance, as I know Hugh Redford is, and maybe some other people in this room, please send me an email and I'll make sure that I send it to you once it is finished. Thank you very much.